Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday, May the 28th, 2024 session in our series on entrepreneurship in Asian high-tech industries. I'm Richard Dasher. I direct the US Asia Technology Management Center at Stanford. We're very happy to produce this series. We want to say special thanks today to the San Francisco Filipino American Chamber of Commerce for helping to sponsor this program. We also want to say a special welcome to high school students from Annie Sullivan School in Jeonju, South Korea. Welcome and for visiting us today. We also want to say welcome to about 60 people who are watching in a pre-breakfast briefing co-hosted by independent investors and the Kaya Fund. Kaya founders in Manila, I guess, right? So welcome to everyone who is here and to our regulars. Welcome back to our students. I'm glad you're here. And we look forward to a really interesting and active panel today about what's happening in the startup ecosystem of the Philippines. To introduce our panel, sitting farthest away from me is Kendrick Geluz, who is co-founder and general partner of Fourth Realm, a San Francisco-based venture capital firm that's focusing mostly on enterprise and industrial sectors. Kendrick was a partner with Global Founders Capital for the Fourth Realm, and Global Founders Capital was kind of powered by Rocket Internet. He's been the head of data science for Hone Capital, which was one of the first companies to use an AI/machine learning model for investors. Kendrick is also the president of STAC Silicon Valley, the Science and Technology Advisory Council, which is an NPO that focuses on accelerating growth and economic development via innovation-based entrepreneurship in the Philippines and also tech transfer to the Philippines. So Kendrick will not be the first person to present. I'm going to ask the first person to present to be Christina Laskowski, who is one of my longest term contacts with the ecosystem in the Philippines. Christina is the founder and principal of Alquemie Ventures. She's also adjunct professor at the University of San Francisco. Alquemie is really a consulting firm that's focused on strategy and transformative change and helps companies develop their strategic kind of paths in that regard. She spent 10 years in change leadership with companies like VMware through its acquisition by Broadcom. And previously, she was the senior vice president of investment banking at FBR Capital Markets. Christina is currently the chair of STAC Silicon Valley, and she played a key role in catalyzing the development of the startup ecosystem in the Philippines. Closest to me, and we're very fortunate that on a short-term visit here, we were able to bring in Paulo Campos, who is the founding managing partner of Kaya Founders. Kaya Founders is a leading early-stage venture capitalist firm that invested in the Philippines and also across Southeast Asia, especially in commerce, logistics, fintech, SaaS, and he was the co-founder of Zalora, the largest or one of the largest fashion e-commerce marketplaces in the Philippines. And he still serves on the board of Zalora. He was the CEO from its founding in 2011 until 2021, seeing it through its IPO. So we're delighted to have all of the members of our distinguished panel to join us today. I'm expecting some exciting comments. And I want to ask Christina to start out because I understand that one of the key points is analyzing the growth of the ecosystem with the public-private partnerships that STAC put together between government agencies and also, you know, corporations in the Philippines. Why don't I turn the floor over to you?
Thank you, Richard. Hello, I'm Christina Laskowski, and as Richard shared earlier, I am the chair of Stack Silicon Valley. I'm going to share mine. Well, I'll just go through some of my slides just to give you a background on the startup ecosystem that exists in the Philippines today. Stack Silicon Valley actually was founded in 1992, and the founder is here in the room, Dado Bonatao, who is one of entrepreneurs here around the world globally, really, and was an inspiration to many of us who were in our 20s in the 1990s who just wanted to help the Philippines. Members of the organization were professionals that were here and members of the Silicon Valley ecosystem. Our chair was an IP attorney. Our former chair was an IP attorney who helped a whole bunch of technology companies. I was elected as president in 1999. My background is in investment banking. So I was part of the capital markets. We had another board member of ours was the VP of engineering at a number of startups, including Oracle. So many of us represented the different functional areas of companies in Silicon Valley. And we had one thing in common. We wanted to help the Philippines. And so when we heard that there was an organization, Stack Silicon Valley here in the Bay Area, we joined, we came together, and just like any other startup, we actually pivoted. It was more of a passive reactive organization. The Philippine government, particularly Department of Science and Technology, had research that they wanted a team here to review and evaluate to see if there were any commercially viable ideas. And so it was really reviewing these ideas. And fast forward to 2008, we actually took that into a new direction of not just reviewing and being a little passive, but being proactive and running Stack as a startup. Our vision was to develop and a self-sufficient, right? It was a developing country. I think back in the late 1990s, early 2000s, our dream was to see a number of companies similar to Israel go public. But we obviously were not at the same level of Israel. So we had to do things slowly and differently. And so we took a different approach when we were asked by the Philippine government once again to see if there was an opportunity for members of Stack to help identify R&D opportunities in the Philippines that were commercially viable. So you can see here, so what we did, one of the first things, and actually Dado was there at the breakfast, we had a breakfast meeting with the President Macapagal Arroyo. And one of the things that we said is, whenever we work on projects with the Philippines, every time the administration changes, we have no idea whether or not our ideas worked, our introductions worked, anything that we did work because the administration changed. And so the one ask I had during the breakfast is, we could definitely help you, but we'd like to institutionalize the relationship. And so that resulted in a memo of agreement with Department of Science and Technology, the Department of Trade and Industry, and the Department of Foreign Affairs. DOST funds R&D, right, through the universities in the Philippines. DTI is there to help build trade and investment in the Philippines. And DFA was a participant in this particular MOA because DFA served as our communication liaison here in the Bay Area because we have a consul general. So Ambassador Marciano Painor, who was the consul general at the time, served as really as our liaison to make sure that whatever we needed from our Philippine partners were addressed, including some of the activity that we did when we first actually kicked off. There was a lot of work involved. This actually started in 2008. The MOA was signed in 2009. And the first thing I did was ask for data. I mean, data is really critically important. And I said, okay, if you want us to review some R&D proposals or ideas that stem from this, have us review it. They couldn't provide any information. The government, couldn't provide any information. We had asked, okay, across the country, what's the focus? They couldn't provide any information. So we actually had to have an exercise to do due diligence because what we wanted to do was our idea was not to push Silicon Valley, the Silicon Valley approach and way of doing things into the Philippines. We wanted to make sure that we were localizing our approach. We wanted to understand what were the strengths of the country, what could we then take a look at and help support, right, in terms of growth. I mean, here in the United States at that time, the biotech hubs were Boston, RTP, the Research Triangle Park in North Carolina, and then you had multimedia in New York, a lot of the digital marketing for LA, and then obviously you had some of the higher tech opportunities here in the Silicon Valley. So we thought maybe in the Philippines it might be similar. Southern region could be focused on ag tech and water. There could be pockets of opportunities across the country, but we didn't really have a lot of information regarding that. So we actually, one of my other board members who's not here, Denny Roja and I spent 17 days meeting with 47 members of the ecosystem there to do an assessment, to get input from them as to what the priorities were, what the focus areas were, to give us some diligence. And the diligence was focused around the pillars of the ecosystem. I don't have that here in my presentation, but I just wanted to share that there was a lot of diligence done before we put together a plan, and the result was actually I think the framework for the startup ecosystem today, because for us to find out what was going on, we had to do a call for papers and across the country to find out what are entrepreneurs focused on? Are there tech entrepreneurs, et cetera? So we rebranded our initiative. It was called On3. It was called On3 because on 1, 2, 3, you pitch for 3 minutes. And it was across the 3 regions of the country, Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao. And fortunately, Georgia Flores, who some of you may know, was one of our board members, and Plug and Play Tech Center agreed to host 8 seats of a 3-month immersion at Plug and Play, right? Because for us, it wasn't just identifying those entrepreneurs and those ideas, but what we wanted to do was bring them here so that they could be introduced to a competitive environment and understand how things work, because our idea was that if they not only have an idea that would be relevant to the Philippines, but could be global, then that could present a lot of fruitful opportunities for the Philippines. So you can see here what in terms of the timeline, a number of things that had taken place. I talked about institutionalizing our relationship with the Philippine government. And then as a result, and I'll go through some of another slide with our partners, we were able to forge strategic partnerships with Globe Telecom, with Smart Communications, with Navarre Technologies, all happened to be in the communications arena, but they were our first corporate partners. And as a result of them participating in the On3 pitch competitions, they actually realized that, oh, there is talent here to invest in. Because one of the first, sort of the feedback that we received when we explained to everyone what we were doing, they didn't really feel that there were startups to invest in, entrepreneurs that were focused in technology-enabled opportunities, et cetera, and we wanted to prove them wrong. Because our observation as members is that when Filipinos left the country, a lot of them were very successful, including in science and technology. So our idea at that time was, we think that there are ideas there. The difference and the value that Stack could bring is access, network, and knowledge. Because without access, without a network, and without knowledge, it's very difficult, whether or not you're in the Philippines or other places in the world, to really push your idea forward, right, and help it develop and grow. So as a result, Globe in 2012 announced Kickstart Ventures, and then Smart Communications, our partner, launched Idea Space, which some of you, if you followed the ecosystem. And we over here in the Bay Area, there was an ask from us to also help Filipino American entrepreneurs. So we actually expanded some of our services. We had Accelerate, which was an immersion program for the Philippines. And then we had an L2 forum, Latitude, Longitude, to highlight Filipino American startups here to investors, to help them become aware of what some of our Filipino American entrepreneurs were focused on. And so you could just see here that, throughout the time, there's definitely been significant growth from not really having any venture capital early stage funding to about 350 million in investment capital in the Philippines by 2015. And then you can see here, it actually, reached $1 billion in funding. So there's definitely been a lot of growth over the last 2 years. Here are the early partners. You can see here, Kickstart, Idea Space, Wireless Wings, Filipino Entrepreneurs Network, Tech Talks, et cetera. Some of you might be familiar, but these were our early partners. And they played a significant role in all the work that was done and all the success stories that we have. These were our first participants for 2011. That's when we actually launched our first On3. And we're happy to say that a number of our startups actually have gone on to have second, third, or even fourth startups and have been successful in terms of entrepreneurship, et cetera. Some of them failed. Actually, we have one startup that he failed with his first two, but he sold his third and he's doing well again. So it was to be expected. We're happy that they did entertain the risk, but without risk, it isn't, you're not gonna have the same reward, right? And here are the 2012 On3 participants. So we did all that work, and between 2009 and 2012, we started to hit, media started to take notice and things started to brew in the country. And then we did, we worked with our partners, but it was really handing off to our partners in the Philippines. We just wanted to make sure that we got things started and help the country transform through innovation based entrepreneurship.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Christina. Kendrick, I think you're going to go next, right? Or Paulo, you're going to go next. Okay. While you're getting set up, Christina, quick follow-up for you. So Stack is, what's the relationship between Stack and On3?
Oh, so On3 was our branded pitch competition. So my background, I'm very big on branding, and I have a branded consumer background. I started out at H&Q in equity research. And so I've always been adamant about branding whatever initiative that you have. And On3 was the brand for our pitch competition.
Okay, thank you. So I also have to say, Jojo Flores says, I'm here, Christina.
Cha-cha.
Okay. Paulo, if you would give us your comments, that would be great.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Dasher, for having me at this event. Very happy to be here. It's actually a return home. Christina and I were exchanging notes earlier. I was actually born in the Bay Area many years ago, moved back to Manila when I was 7 years old. So from the first grade until the end of high school, I did finish school back in Manila. So somehow feels certainly like a return home, and great to be back on the Stanford campus. Big thanks as well to Kimberly and Brianna, who have been helping us with this session. Given that Kaya is one of the early stage VCs on the ground in the Philippines, I did want to do a bit of a whirlwind tour as to what we're seeing in the Philippines these days. I'll posit that the Philippines is the most exciting venture ecosystem in Southeast Asia today. I have a few facts to share along those lines. Special thanks to special guests of mine, Professor Dasher, if you don't mind. I have a bunch of my family back there, including the little boy's voice is my so if you hear him wanting to participate, he probably gets it from daddy. But my wife, aunts, titos and titas, as we say in the Philippines, also here to support. So thank you to my family for being here. I don't usually get nervous, but with my family here. Great. So Kaya, as Professor Dasher mentioned, is an early stage VC. We set this up about 3.5 years ago, and we've made over 40 investments from pre-seed to pre-series A. We invest between 150 to 500,000 US dollars in a range of different sectors. We say our investment thesis is sector agnostic, country specific, and we invest in anything that is really for the betterment of the Philippines. Incidentally, for those of you who don't know, Kaya in Tagalog, Filipino means can do. And as we say, and we call ourselves Kaya Founders and not Kaya Capital or Kaya Ventures, anything like that, because for us, this focus is squarely on the entrepreneurs and founders and the new breeds of founders that we're seeing emerge in the Philippine landscape, and their positive can-do spirit to make generational and impactful change in the Philippines. Again, the theme for today's presentation is that I would say that there is no more exciting place in Southeast Asia than the Philippines when it comes to venture ecosystem. For many years, it was Indonesia. As you can imagine, Indonesia is the largest country in Southeast Asia, 2.5 times our population, about 3 times our GDP. But the Philippines, I think, is now having our time in the sun in the rest of this decade. I'll share some data that seems to corroborate that. And again, I'll posit that we are in quite a unique window of opportunity from now until the end of this decade, where you'll really see the emergence and the continuation of a lot of the trends and evolution Christina mentioned, really crescendoing into a quite exciting and rich venture landscape in the Philippines. Kaya was one of the local VCs, Philippine VCs that contributed to this seminal report that Google releases every year on the Southeast Asian economy or digital economy. And I'll share just a few facts from that report that highlight again why I think it's a very exciting time to be in the Philippines. So this is not the Philippines, but Southeast Asia overall is a digital economy, grew grown 8x over the past 8 years to over $100 billion in 2023. So that's significant growth and across different sectors of the digital economy. Why we're very excited is that partly to do, I think, with some of this decoupling happening with China and the US, there is plenty of venture capital, dry powder, as we say, or uninvested venture capital in the region. By the end of 2022, it was estimated to be about $16 billion of uninvested venture capital committed to Southeast Asia. And again, when looking at the landscape of Southeast Asia these days, the Philippines certainly stands out as one of the most exciting ecosystems. The big 6 economies of Southeast Asia are on the screen, and between Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, the Philippines is forecasted to be the fastest growing digital economy until 2030. And the digital economy, of course, exceeding our projected GDP growth. The Philippines has been the fastest growing economy in Southeast Asia the past couple of years running. That's expected to continue through to the end of the decade. I think, as you'll see, you'll really see the Philippines emerge as, again, the most exciting place for venture, the venture ecosystem in Southeast Asia. There are 3 reasons and then 3 drivers of why this is happening from what we're seeing on the ground. At Kaya, we like to talk about the different segments of founders that we're seeing emerging particularly in this post-pandemic era. Many corporate executives turning now, seeing that there is a rich pool of venture capital available and different types of investors. Startups are now becoming startup founders. I have on the pictures of some of the founders in our portfolio, including Guaya Melgar of a company called Mochi, Jojo Malolos, who's now the CEO of PayMongo, which is a Stripe-backed payments company that's in our portfolio, and Nel Laigo, who was previously in the FMCG space and now running Peddler, one of the point-of-sale apps for sari-sari stores or little corner stores in the Philippines, used by a few 100,000 sari-sari stores on a daily basis. The second segment is near and dear to the event today, and I think many of you potentially are students thinking about your future. I know a few of you are, and we call you the sea turtles. We like the moniker because sea is Southeast Asia as well. So those of you here in the Bay Area, potentially with ties to the Philippines, as Christina and Kendrick do, potentially wanting to go home to the country to help build and create startups there. I have on the screen Cohen Harris, who is a Filipino American who moved to the Philippines for the first time, post his MBA at Wharton last year, and Dexter Legot Gordon, who many of you might know from the local ecosystem, moving from San Francisco to build Swarm. Certainly, another important segment would be, as we call them lovingly, the adopted Filipinos. Those of you who've been to Manila will know that it's quite a nice place to live as an expat, English-speaking population, and then generally a very hospitable place for those looking to build businesses in the Philippines. So we have many expats or non-Filipinos who've chosen to plant their flag and build their companies out in the Philippines. We have the likes of Constantine Roberts, who heads up LOCAD, Bella Gupta, who is the Stanford GSB alum, and heading up a company called Edamama in the e-commerce space, and Alexander Friedhoff, German national, who's running eTaily, Series A-backed e-commerce enabler. And finally, I think part of why there's really this burgeoning of interest in the ecosystem these days is that many of the first generation of tech giants across the region are now producing alumni. We call them the second generation tech talent. Professionals who previously might have worked for me at Zalora before, or at Grab, or Lazada, Gojek, Foodpanda, some of these large pan-Southeast Asian companies are now looking to strike it out on their own and build their own ventures. And I have here as examples, Jess Demese was previously my chief commercial officer at Zalora, who was a registered nurse when I first recruited her 10 years ago, and is now back in healthcare as the founder and CEO of Kindred, a pioneering women's health clinic focused on women's health concerns. And to his right, another one of my former colleagues, who is Victor Lim, who is the co-founder and CEO of Craver's Canteen, which is a food cloud kitchen business operating in Manila. So from Zalora alumni building great companies. So this is one part of the story, is that there are great founders answering the call. The second is that the enabling ecosystem is certainly thriving. I have here different segments of collaborators and partners in the ecosystem, from the different accelerators, and shout out to AIM Dado Banato Incubator, which has been playing a crucial role with the Asian management in training the next generation of entrepreneurs. There are venture builders and angel networks now helping to back founders at the earliest stages of the journey. I think in large part thanks to the pioneering work of Christina and many of you out here in the Bay Area. Government is now fully behind and supportive of the ecosystem in the Philippines, and the likes of the National Development Company, Startup Venture Fund, Department of Trade and Industry, all playing an active role now in cultivating the ecosystem. And I mentioned as well here many of the impact organizations also helping promote and catalyze the ecosystem through their own efforts. Many of which are seeing tremendous interest from founders really wanting to throw their hat in the ring, become entrepreneurs. One such part of the ecosystem is one of our partners, and Keenan Lagarte of the Independent Investors here with us today, flew in from Manila as well. I think the Independent Investor has done a great job really talking about and promoting awareness around the venture ecosystem. These are just 3 events that the team has hosted over the last 2 or 3 months, including sessions with Joel Consing, and the CEO of the Moharlika Fund. I was lucky to be part of this panel on Vision to Venture in the Middle, and one of my former colleagues at Zalora, 500 Startups, Martin Koo, just recently. So shout out to the Independent Investor team, and then I will recognize the fact that this is a poster from the viewing party that Professor Dasher mentioned. So there's a big group of them. So hi to everyone in Manila gathered in the room, and together with the Independent Investor, we are hosting a viewing party for the session back in Manila. Jojo himself, Jojo Flores, made himself known on Zoom. Hi, Jojo. Indeed, what we're seeing is that there is really tremendous number of accelerator programs and incubators really building and helping support the Philippine ecosystem, including Quezon City. One of our partners at Kaya is Ray Alimurong, also a Stanford alum from the GSB. His wife is Joy Blamonte of Quezon City, and Quezon City is very active in promoting startup ecosystem. It's the largest city in the Philippines with over 4 million people. And the PhilDev team and in Dado and Maria Nato here as well. I was telling Paco Sandejas is also here with us. You know, a lot of the work we do in the Philippines, we stand on the shoulders of these giants before us who've really shone a light and then really had the mission of supporting the ecosystem in the Philippines. I'm going to race through the last part, Professor Dasher, because I realize, but I did want to share some exciting news from the front lines, if I say it that right. So my final point on why the ecosystem is really thriving in the Philippines is that funding is flowing in from outside the country, and particularly from Singapore and the rest of Southeast Asia, but also from within, from within the country. There are many funds now operating in the Philippines. It had previously been some of the corporate venture capital that Christina mentioned, the likes of a Kickstart or a Gentry of the C Group or JGDev, the Gohongwei Group. There are also increasingly regional and global investors, the likes of Wavemaker Partners, who's actually also out here on these shores, in addition to being based in Singapore. And you see Plug and Play as well, and you see Georgia and Mike Bacedo also on the call from the Plug and Play team, also giants in the ecosystem and industry whose work we're trying to continue. So funding is flowing in, and the result, and I'll wrap up the presentation with just taking you on a tour of the universe. Again, we're using our partners with Independent Investor. I spent a few hours on the website yesterday, just taking screenshots of all the exciting things happening. So I will race through this, and then each of the slides has a theme. This particular slide, these are all in the last 2 or 3 months. These are DFIs or development finance institutions, the likes of the ADB, the likes of the IFC, providing credit. So not equity funding, but credit facilities for startups in the fintech space, targeting low-cost housing, which is Lupa, targeting SMEs, which is First Circle, and targeting consumers, Salmon, Rafi Montemayor team. So we're seeing very active involvement from the DFIs in terms of funding, which is quite exciting. Similarly, across the fintech space, we're seeing extremely exciting movement in the space with new companies being born, also acquisitions happening. There was a very large acquisition just recently with one of the country's digital banks, GoTime, acquiring Savvy for quite a significant amount, and indeed, quite an exciting exit outcome for the founders of that business. And in our portfolio, we have the likes of RuralNet, which is a Cebu-based rural insurance company, and NetBank, which is an open banking embedded finance startup, recently Series A round. So these are kind of all in the fintech theme. Similarly, when it comes to SME enablement, there's really so many companies working to enable SMEs on the B2B side to help grow their businesses. I had mentioned Peddler earlier, working for sari stores. Growsari is another one. Very far along in its fundraising journey, having raised a Series C funding round during the pandemic, and they were recently expanding to support the different sari stores or small businesses as part of their ecosystem. We also have the likes of Mochi building payment solution for SMEs, and Britannia, a no-code ERP for SMEs, really trying to help enable and leverage the power of technology to transform businesses. Not just large, but small as well. In not only in fintech and B2B SaaS, but as well as the more core industries of education and healthcare. Very happy to share that there is very exciting developments on all fronts. Henry Monte Munoz is now the CEO of Edge Tutor, a very exciting edtech company based in the Philippines, targeting a global audience. And 2 ventures, I mentioned Kindred earlier, and Go Rocky, a men's health startup focused on men's health concerns. So education and healthcare, also seeing some very exciting traction and movement. Just 3 more slides on the update. These would, Professor Dasher mentioned that Kaya also does invest in regional startups that are coming to the Philippines. Part of our thesis is there are a number of companies in Southeast Asia looking to come into the Philippines, and we're able to really support them in market entry as well. So we have invested in the likes of Pylon and Wiz Auto, and a company started by a former colleague of mine at Zadora, Pavel Bliznicki out of Singapore, WasteX in the middle, also coming to the Philippines, and having launched in multiple countries around the world. The vice versa of that is Philippine companies also raising to go abroad. And we have the likes of Advance, which is a earned wage access company, expanding to Vietnam after closing their pre-Series A round, where Kaya did participate. Plastic Credit Exchange is a venture started by Nanette Medvedpo and headed up by Sebastian de Grande, the CEO. And they've partnered, they're a Philippine-based company, but partnered with L'Oreal, who is looking to offset their plastic footprint. Finally, Sterling Gordon of Swarm, living in Manila, often visiting us in our office, but targeting a primarily US audience with his remote work platform, Swarm. In the consumer retail space, we're seeing significant investment in the likes of Dali, which is a hard discount retailer in Canterbury, and we have Steve Paradis here in the audience, and Pickup Coffee is, as you might have heard, also raising a very significant round, and the lines are really blurring between these online and offline businesses. And then in terms of exciting Series A rounds that happened just in the last 12 months, happy to mention Edamama, who I mentioned earlier, raising very significant Series A funding, and two in our portfolio, Locad and eTaily, in the e-commerce space where I'm from, also raising quite significant rounds of Series A funding. So this is something that was quite unheard of even just a few years ago. And now you're really seeing an explosion of opportunity across the board. And finally, additional funds being raised as well. I mentioned here Wavemaker Partners, who has raised a new fund targeted Southeast Asia, and we recently did our second close for Kaya as well, ready to deploy into exciting Philippine startups. So to summarize, I think what we're seeing in the local landscape and what's driving the very exciting ecosystem in the country is that the founders are really emerging like never seen before. The enabling ecosystem is thriving and helping those founders to succeed. And this virtuous cycle or this flywheel is really starting to spin with investors taking an interest in that, encouraging more founders to pop up, and that encouraging more ecosystem enablers to support. And we're really seeing this flywheel really accelerating in a very exciting way. So now is the time to bet on the Philippines, and Philippine startups are certainly building the future we want to see. That's the Kaya team. Shout out to those watching in Manila, and my email as well.
Well, those are great comments. As we get ready for Kendrick to present, I've got a follow-up question for you, and for everyone. I'm also kind of using this opportunity to pull in part of the questions from Glenn, who is in the breakfast briefing. So as an investor, what do you look for when you're considering an investment? What do you think are the probability of failure for any, startup company at the stage you're looking at? What are the kind of good elements of a profile that you would want to see? What do you think will be the most important thing? Because this may be different than if you were looking, say, around here.
Right. So I would say where the majority of the action is in the Philippines these days is in the early stage. There are some companies, I made mention of a few of them, that are raising growth round, but there may be just a couple of dozen companies in the Philippines that are in the kind of growth stage or later. So majority of the companies we're seeing emerging are early stage companies. We like to differentiate ourselves by investing really from the onset at the earliest stages of the journey, at the pre-seed stage. At that stage, it's really all about the founder, Professor Dasher, and the motivation, the domain expertise of the founder, motivations for why they're building that business, and the resilience and the ability to adapt that will for certainly be a perilous and daunting journey. I think those are the most important things.
So really the jockey and not the horse.
Very much so. Kaya founders and not the Kaya capital or ventures.
Okay, great. Thank you. So moving on, Kendrick, your comments.
Perfect. Well, my volume is clear, but tough act to follow. First off, thank you to Professor Dasher for inviting me to speak here, because this is a little bit of a full circle moment. I was an undergraduate here at Stanford and I was enrolled in this very lecture series like 12 or 13 years ago. It's strange to be on this side of the aisle, but just goes to show that could be any one of you in the audience. So we've heard from Christina about the 0 to 1 journey of the Philippines ecosystem. And when she took over as president of STAC, we're talking about a Philippine startup ecosystem that was dramatically smaller, less mature, and so on. And so there's been a lot of great work that's been done over the years, and you've heard that in Paulo's presentation about the current state of the Philippines. So what do I have left to talk about? That's my special or somewhat unique perspective as a Silicon Valley investor who is involved, passionate about the Philippines ecosystem. So I get to talk about what I view are the critical yet addressable gaps between, if you were to compare Silicon Valley and the Philippines. And then afterwards, I believe we have a panel on the just general future opportunities. So why am I qualified? Well, one, I have been a Silicon Valley VC for the last 8.5 years. Right now, I run my own venture capital syndicate called Fourth Realm. So we have about 30 million under management, invested in 45 companies, most of which are here, but some actually are in the Philippines. Prior to that, I was a partner at Global Founders Capital, and Professor Dasher previewed a little bit of that. We had $3 billion dedicated exclusively to supporting early stage startups. And I was the person in Silicon Valley in charge of making sure we had top-notch coverage here. And then I also had a specialty in some of the more technical things like AI applications, AI infrastructure, developer tools, and so on. And then prior to that, I built AI investment models at another investment firm just down the street on University Avenue in Palo Alto. So why do I mention this? Well, my career looks like I've been here in Silicon Valley, but I've actually had a couple of toes dipped into the Philippine startup ecosystem. So if you see PayMongo, which is part of the Kaya portfolio, it's a Stripe for the Philippines, and I was able to invest in that first round of financing. Same story for Expedoc, which is software for freight forwarders and 3PLs. I would think I was the second check ever. And then Avion School is training the next generation of software developers in the Philippines. So all wonderful companies. And then in 2017, Christina invited me to join STAC. Well, put me up for election, I guess. So everyone said yes, fortunately. And that's how I started deepening my involvement with the Philippines and the Philippine startup ecosystem. I had the honor of succeeding her as president just this year. So whereas STAC has done all this work to take the Philippine startup ecosystem from 0 to 1, we are trying to figure out how do you take it now to 10, 100, and so on. And so why do I bring all of this up? Well, it is to say that even, well, as Filipino heritage people abroad, you're actually in a very special place. And I might be cannibalizing from potential entrepreneurs for Kaya, which is to say, you don't have to go home. You can stay here and you can join STAC one way and support in a very unique way this ecosystem. So if you're interested, the email's right there. Yeah. I have to say there's one more preview that I didn't put on the slide, but Paulo and I'm working with Paulo and Kaya founders on a new initiative of how do we connect or bridge the Philippines community or the greater Asia community with the AI sort of ML data science, this technical startup ecosystem here. So offering things like investment exposure and returns or strategic insights, business development, and so on. So if that's of interest to you, please reach out to me or Paulo. But we return to the core question, which is what are the gaps? If I could actually make the slides move. What are the gaps in the Philippine startup ecosystem? So I went to the Philippines in February. I was raised in the Philippines, I should say, but I returned to the Philippines in February and I interviewed about 30 stakeholders, builders, investors like Paulo, which is actually how I came to meet him, government officials, accelerators. And I asked, what do you think are the biggest gaps? And three common trends, but one was culture. And the culture of the core of this ecosystem, the builders, the investors, that's matured greatly. I think we can still, it's not quite the same as Silicon Valley, and maybe there's more work to be done. But when we talk about culture, it actually extends beyond that because the ecosystem, whether here, anywhere, But in the Philippines, it doesn't exist in a bubble. So if we look at one circle outside of that core, corporate leadership, are they willing or not to engage with a startup in conversation or to be a design partner? And it's certainly very different than here where corporations love to talk to startups and be design partners and be a part of that innovation. Second, rule of law. And both Kaya and Stack over the decades have really been trying to push things. I'm not an expert in this area, but things like startup equity grants for employees or the treatment of a startup loss to try to make that not be a personal liability, which you can imagine is a big deterrent. And then something like other incentives, like how do we drive that? Now, one more piece of the puzzle, which is greater society. And I've mentored a number of people over the years, had the fortune of it. Tech is like poorly understood. Being a tech founder is quadruply misunderstood. So this woman I mentored, she went to Berkeley, studied computer science, became a software engineer, but she was saying when she had this decision point, she talked to her parents about it. And they said, anak, which means child, like, why would you focus on being a software engineer? Why not just be a nurse? And that's, nurse is a noble goal, but that is, just to show that this tech landscape is not well understood and it's not appreciated yet. So let's return to things that we can affect as Stack, because those things are a little broader than what we can do. If we take that core population of builders, people have told me there's still a gap between those builders who have been deeply exposed to the US or Europe and the bulk of the local population. So we want to change that. If you look at how many startups from the Philippines have gone through Y Combinator? Since 2006, it's only about 10 or 15. And we really think if we can build a density of these types of founders who have come to the US, gone through a 3 to 6 month acceleration program, been surrounded by sort of other startup executives and people who have gone through that journey longer and been surrounded by other builders, can that dramatically change the culture? So one initiative that we have at Stack is to figure out how do we guide Filipino entrepreneurs into these types of accelerator programs here in Silicon Valley or in Europe or the rest of the US. So we're hoping that we come out with something, an MVP of sorts over the summer, and then something more fully fleshed out in October or November. But that is to say, what can you apply to? How do you apply? What are the alumni that have come before you and that can prepare you? What are the successful applications that have worked out in the past? That's one of our initiatives. And again, if that's of interest, please let us know. Second, and you can read it, lack of specialized technical talent, and then you'll tell me, Kendrick, like that's a problem anywhere in the world. You could always use more technical talent. But I actually mean this in a very specific way, because one of the national priorities for the Philippines is to transition to this IP or intellectual property-based economy. And we actually have a solid foundation of software engineers, marine biologists, electronics manufacturing technicians. So we have that. But if we want to be an IP-based economy, we have to be on the cutting edge of maybe not research and development. That's another question of PhD level resources, but be on the cutting edge of implementation, commercialization, design, and so on. And that's to say, can we take this foundation of skilled labor, but generalized labor, right? A software engineer, how can we make them a specialist in AI? How do we take a marine biologist and make them a bioengineer who can use CRISPR to edit genes? How do we take an electronics manufacturing technician and then start implementing them in a broader set of design and downstream creation? We have two initiatives at Stack that we're planning, one more general, one more specific. The more general one is called the Project Board. And I really emphasize project because we're looking to partner with startups and small, medium businesses who know that they have a technical thing they want to create, but might not have the resources, the human capital, the talent in-house. And what we want to do with those projects is find people, whether Filipinos abroad or even beyond that, to say, there is some skill set outside of the Philippines. Can we connect that with these technical projects? And really, we see this as ranging anywhere from a college graduate, recent grad, all the way to a seasoned 30-year professional, but really to find a way that external knowledge can both be an independent individual contributor to a technical project, but also build up a team, educate people about the process and so on. Now, the second one is a stretch goal, the second initiative. That is what I'll roughly call the AI Finishing Institute. And it's patterned after some programs here in Silicon Valley where somebody who has, like, let's talk about in context of what I'm trying to do. Take Python programmers. We have a lot of them in the Philippines, 5-10 years of expertise, of experience. How do we turn them into an AI engineer, right? And I think based on the models that we have here in Silicon Valley, you can do it over a 2 to 3 month stretch where you take their highly skilled but general knowledge and then give them the language, the techniques, the math, the mapping between a business problem and a technical implementation. And then we finish them into this higher, like, specialized technical talent. And I think we can do the same for cybersecurity, distributed computing, and so on in the future. Now, the third and final thing I'll talk about is the lack of experienced function leaders. So picture yourself as a CEO and a co-founder. You've now scaled in the Philippines to 100, 200, 500 employees. And beyond your co-founders, like, who would you then hire as the next C-suite executive or senior leader? Let's take a step back. Look at the United States. Take Snowflake as an example. This is a company that's gone and IPO'd in recent years. The CFO, Mike Scarpelli, I believe, before that, before he was CEO and took this company public, he was on the board of Nutanix, the chairman of the audit committee. With Nutanix, they went and IPO'd. Prior to that, he was CFO of ServiceNow, brought them through an IPO, and so on. And that's the kind of institutional knowledge, that's the flywheel that I believe we have to create in the Philippines, of this institutional knowledge that is highly specific to startups and scaling startups. It goes beyond finance, of course. It goes into things like sales and revenue, right? How do you stand up a sales team? How do you create sales playbooks, quota attainment? It goes into marketing, like programmatic ad buying, pricing, product-led growth, so on and so forth. Even product, like, I think product has been one of the most needed disciplines that is the most underserved in all of Southeast Asia. So how do we create this? Well, we're hoping to do our part, going back to that initiative of the project board. How do we find skilled, knowledgeable, whether Filipinos abroad or even outside of the Filipino heritage? And can we offer that to startups and SMBs on a fractional or mentorship basis to say, okay, this person is going to show you how, and we'll build, a professional enterprise sales or outbound sales force. On top of that, we're hoping that they can then mentor their own replacement in the company. And then that's how we'll generate the flywheel for ourselves in the Philippines. So I've talked a lot now, but before I turn it over to the Professor Dasher, if this is of interest to you, either as somebody who wants to contribute talent or expertise, somebody who wants to help us, join us on Stack and organize, administer some of these programs, or if you're a startup and you're looking, how do I get to a Y Combinator? How do I pull off this technical project? Please contact me or Christina or Paulo, but so I'll turn it back over to Professor Dasher, and thank you.
Kendrick, thank you. So one thing none of our panelists have mentioned is exit pattern. So what does exit look like if you're a startup company?
Yeah, I can jump in.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think you're right, Professor Dasher, to start with that question. It's the number one question I get from investors who thinking about the Kaya investment thesis. I think everyone agrees that there's a tremendous amount of activity, that there's a tremendous amount of quality startups now, new breeds of founders, despite some of the challenges that can be, and certainly this momentum that we're seeing building. Indeed, I think the story is still to be written when it comes to the exit landscape, not only for the Philippines, but across Southeast Asia, I would say. There were some notable ones, of course, over the past decade that were able to achieve exit. And I think the main thinking is still along that path of public listing, whether on an international exchange or increasingly on the local Philippine Stock Exchange. So the local capital markets, while in their current form, not exactly kind of amenable to kind of enabling startups to form an exit. Certainly, there are many people in the ecosystem working on and with the Philippine Stock Exchange to make that a viable exit path for Philippine startups in that regard. And you have, the likes of Singapore and the SGX and other exchanges as well, meeting companies in the Philippines and encouraging listing out there. I think in a very conglomerate-heavy landscape such as the Philippines, where you have, quite a bit of concentration of economic activity in these the conglomerate groups, I think that actually is quite a prime recipe for M&A. So if not the IPO route, for the acquisition route would then be people's minds. I had shown an example from just recently of one of the large digital banks of the country acquiring a fintech startup. And so I think what has often been seen as one of the real characteristics of the Philippine economy, which is its a strong economic concentration to conglomerates. I think in this case, with all of these new startups being born and this type of mindset and culture Kendrick was talking about, really shifting towards a venture capital mindset, that now is a fertile ground for acquisitions and for these conglomerates to acquire some of these startups.
Okay, thank you. That's a great answer. Before we go on, I have one follow-up for you, Kendrick. It actually came in from Zoom. Okay. So you've given a great gap analysis. Are you confident that it is moving forward? Are you really concerned that this is going to be barriers that can't overcome? Are you optimistic or pessimistic?
I think these are all barriers that we can overcome. Then that's certainly what we're trying to do with Stack. Play our part. I mean, there's of course other ecosystem players that are all trying to move the needle. I'm optimistic, but of course, things like culture, things like rule of law take time. And so we're probably more impatient than what we'll actually see. But for now, I'll say we're optimistic and we're really, I believe Kaya Founders is trying to weigh in on the latest set of regulations, right? Same with the cultural thing. We have players like Endeavor Philippines trying to create role models that will shift a lot of these gaps. So I think I'm pretty confident. We just might see it take time. And I think that's the biggest challenge, to remain patient, stay.
And also the energy to keep going.
Yeah.
I think that's something that you all have demonstrated already. One of the most exciting things. This is maybe the 7th or 8th time we've had the ecosystem of the Philippines featured in our series. And every year it moves further forward. It's really interesting to see. Let's open the floor to questions from this audience. Why don't you go first? I saw your hand first.
In American venture, we've seen companies staying private for longer. It's a lot more difficult to IPO now than it was 2 decades ago. They're raising Series E's, F's, and I's. How is it like to go public on the PSC, for instance? Is this a reasonable exit opportunity or is it incredibly difficult?
So a couple of things, it's become easier. So the PSC has lifted some of the restrictions that made it virtually impossible for any startup to list, particularly around profitability requirements. There used to be like a certain number of years you had to be profitable before being able to list. So some of those things have gone away. And there are a few examples of companies listing on a pre-revenue or very early basis. But to your question directly, it's few and far between and still extremely difficult. So the focus is really more on the building side of the equation than the harvesting these days, frankly. And the activity we're seeing really is people at the early stage trying to figure out product market fit and trying to take advantage of this newfound adoption that we're seeing in the Philippines in terms of digital behavior. A lot of it pandemic induced as it was around the world. And So I think your question will be very relevant, I would say, in maybe 4 or 5 years as these companies mature. Those that are kind of nearing or in the pre-IPO phase are certainly looking at public listing on the PSE, and that would, I think, deepen the capital markets and pave the way for future startups to do as well. But certainly now, very difficult.
Let me kind of follow up and ask for, in the growth phase of a startup, how important do you think it is for a Philippine startup to really start to, at what stage should they start to look Southeast Asia wide and try to expand into other markets?
Yeah, I can give my 2 cents quickly. It used to be you had to right away. You would be hard pressed to be able to find funding if you were really only building for the addressable market of the Philippines. I think that's no longer the case. I think with the increase in GDP per capita and just general economic development, the Philippines has had very steady, 5, 6, 7% economic growth for a couple of decades now. So that's really meant that this new segment of the population entering the kind of middle class and doing things like shopping online and saving more and with these new type of consumer behavior. So yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna comment on that. I mean, because I think a function of strong capital market also has to do with your market opportunity, right? Your ability to grow. And I think once the startups are addressing problems that are not just unique to the Philippines, but are transferred globally, whether it's Africa, Southeast Asia, et cetera, there's probably going to be more of an opportunity. And the one observation that we had when we started our work, and we purposely did it, we did not look for investors in the Philippines when we were introducing the startups. We looked to bring in investors from outside the country, because there is a bit of, when you talk about culture, there's a bit of a herd mentality. Right? Like I said, the moment you have all these startups, everyone, you're going to see a lot of activity around because now it's accepted, right? But when you talk about, again, from an opportunity perspective, capital markets, et cetera, I think the function is that once we get the startups to a point where they're generating enough revenue that addresses a large market, you'll have more, not just internally, but externally, probably demanding ownership. Right, to get a piece of that, or to be able to either or buy, right? If you can't build, you buy the company. That's typically how it works.
I have a real stack question here. There were a couple of questions that came out on Zoom about what you think the role of government, the Philippine government, should be.
Well, our version, so here's.
Make it really comfortable for.
Yeah, so the government is there to actually put in place policies to support the ecosystem. They're not there to promote startups. They're there to make it easier and support the startups to flourish and grow. And so for example, one of the first things we did when we talked about the meeting with members of the pillars of the ecosystem, we went to the IPO office, the intellectual property office, and we asked, is there intellectual property being filed here? And the way that the system was set up was to protect intellectual property of foreign companies coming into the Philippines, not to protect intellectual property developed in the Philippines. And what I was hearing from the different scientists is like, oh my gosh, our scientists are going to Malaysia, they're going to Japan, they've invented all these great things, and yet it's being monetized by other countries because we didn't have the infrastructure in place set up the right way, right, to support. And so that's turned around a little bit. Fortunately, our chairman, Dennis, did spend time with the IPO office and help them understand the benefits of protecting IP, because here in Silicon Valley, your proprietary IP is what also is of value, right? But in the Philippines, they're like, what's IP? It's not collateral, it's not something hard, et cetera. And we had to educate and train them. So what we did is we really wanted to make sure that the infrastructure was in place, right? The framework was there to support as we started to see startups, because without that, it would be difficult. But government is there to serve the people. It's not there to tell you what to do or put blocks, right? So what's really great is we didn't go in saying they don't know, they don't understand technology, they understand science, they don't understand things. No, they don't. That wasn't their job before. It's our job to help educate them to partner with them and to make sure that they have the understanding, knowledge, network to be able to put in place what will support the ecosystem. So that's what the role of government is to help serve and support members of society.
Kendrick, do you have a follow-up on that? Especially about the role of the government, maybe encouraging people overseas to pay more attention to the Philippines, whether it's the diaspora or whether it's investors. Are there things that you would like to see?
It's the Philippines has been very supportive of sending Filipinos out there, right? We even have a special like tax immigration designation called OFW, so overseas Filipino workers. Foreign, you know, effectively send the Filipinos out there.
Yeah.
And I think that it's time to reap some of that. It's been very controversial, I'll tell you that. I think that there could be a set of policies to try to encourage that, and I do think, I have seen, at least speaking about the consulate here, there's more of an effort to engage the diaspora and see how they might contribute back home. So I'd love to see that trend continue, how we can support it. We would love to. As an example, there's one government agency that runs a program called the Balik Scientist Program. Balik meaning like go home or go back or return. And so that is actually a model for us with our project board to say, how can we fit in that at least infrastructure or at least idea and complement it really. So there are programs that are official positions of the government to try to encourage a lot of this work, and we would love to see that continue.
Yeah, I have two thoughts too. So the big scientist, actually, when I went back to do due diligence, Danny and I were the first Balik Technopreneur awardee, right? They said, can we leverage this program to serve for Balik, you know, return entrepreneurs? And so we were the prototype, or it was a pilot with us, right? With to see if that would work. And it could, because they have funds for it. It's with DOST has the funds, et cetera. But the other thing I think with government, right, from a role, so here's another gap, which we didn't talk about, but there were all these programs implemented in the last decade that supports funding postgraduate studies, right? So you can leave the Philippines, get your PhD, your master's, et cetera, and it's funded. And I remember the person running this program called Stride that was under US-AID, and he was talking to me saying, oh, it's really great. We've got all these, you know, students that are taking advantage of this. And I said, okay, well, if I'm a scientist, where do I go when I go back to the Philippines? Because it was also contingent upon those receiving that degree to go back to the Philippines and apply their knowledge. So I said, where do they go? Do you have a life science hub? So if I'm a scientist, am I going to continue to do my research in country? The private sector needs to get involved and also needs to have, you know, businesses that are going to support the intellectual capital that resides with members of, you know, whether it's in the Philippines or even our diaspora, right? They're looking for opportunities to share their knowledge, build new businesses, et cetera. So I think there needs to be a partnership. I think that's one area where the government can actually kind of work hand in hand, is promote that with the business. You see that here.
I've seen several hands. I saw your hand a few minutes ago. Yep, go ahead.
All right, thank you. My name's Joe, and I have a small venture capital firm called DNA Partners for the last 10 years, and we've been investing in USA and China. And in 2019, we were looking at the Philippines, and I went there 5 times and was digging in. My question today is really simple. I'd be happy to talk to anyone after the meeting. We're ecosystems in the Philippines, technology related, but you have to omit in this question, you have to omit Manila, and you have to omit, please, I mean, politely, please omit Manila and omit call centers and call centers, and just think of software development. So where are the ecosystems, which cities outside of Manila?
No, great question. I'll answer it by referring to some of the components you mentioned, which is, you know, when you talk about the structural trends that drive the Philippine economy, one would be the diaspora that we have all around the world sending remittances back home, and that's 10% of our GNP, kind of touching 40 billion US in remittances coming in, fueling the consumer sector and in the economy generally. The second pillar of similar size actually is the business process outsourcing industry, as you mentioned. So call centers, but increasingly now other higher value work. What that has done though is that it's really trained workforce across the country. BPOs now exist across the country and throughout Visayas and Mindanao and key cities such as Iloilo, Cagayan de Oro. I mean, these places in smaller cities, but with significant tech talent graduating from universities there. That these pockets are really building up. So I would say those two key factors in terms of the overseas Filipino remittances and the business process outsourcing industry, and the fact that we're an English-speaking country, right? And
What about Cebu?
yeah, no, indeed. So I think all of
National airport.
Actually,
Yes.
all this has been going on. Somebody asked about, what's happening in Cebu and Davao and other places. And Toby from Kaya Founders
oh, great. So
wrote a message back
Thank you,
saying,
Toby,
"We
for
invested
jumping
in
in.
rural and also in another company in Samar."
That's right. Peddler, which is based in Katbalog and Samar.
Yeah. So there are ecosystems there, but what are the biggest challenges for regional expansion
Yeah.
in the Philippines, getting out of the Philippines, out of the sort of Manila,
Yeah. Yeah. I'll
Center.
speak more about the opportunities and maybe reference Kendrick's presentation and Joe's question around the gaps in terms of tech talent. I see one of the things coming out of the pandemic that will really help solve that issue is this prevalence of remote work arrangements. I think now you have developer and tech talent not having to move to Manila, to your point, to your question directly, and are able to join companies on a remote basis. Frankly, not even just Philippine ones, but I think a lot of US companies are recruiting virtual kind of remote talent in the Philippines. So that is, I think, really created this ability for anyone across the country, no matter where you're from, to be able to, be part of the startup ecosystem. A number of our tech startups have distributed tech teams across the country. And one way we solve for that issue, Kendrick mentioned, is that we don't try to hire 10 developers in a common office every day in Manila, but we are happy to have remote work setups from talent living in Cebu and other places, able to contribute on a remote basis. So I think that was one of the constraints, but I think post-pandemic, it might be flip into an opportunity.
So also, go ahead. Why don't you ask your question? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Erin Pangilinan. I'm indebted both to Christina and Kendrick for advising my organization, Faster Filipino Americans in STEAM. They were both advisors to our organization, and I used to be the marketing and communications director for Stack. I designed the Stack logo that you all saw with the Silicon Trip many years ago, and also esteemed and very privileged to be in the presence of Maria and Dado Boneta, who are also
Your question, please.
Question, how do we make sure that we also identify successes, not just in terms of venture capital, but other areas within the Philippine tech ecosystem, particularly like blockchain, for example? So I work at the intersection of artificial intelligence, spatial computing, and with all the buzzwords, and Web3 blockchain. And I cannot stop hearing about Yield Guild Game, which is YGG. So Beryl Lee, who we met through, I think, Earl Martin Valencia, who's also on Zoom online, had introduced me to Beryl Lee, who had founded that organization. It is like the mainstream thing that I hear from blockchain people when they think of games in the Philippines. They hadn't developed a game. It was just people playing on it. I guess, yes. Question, so directly would be, how do we identify success outside of exits so that we're retaining both talent and money that stays within the country in the Philippines? And then second, how do we make sure that we as Filipinx Americans, I'm second generation born here, have opportunities to invest? So for example, a lot of people.
Okay, I think that's a good place to stop.
Yeah.
Those are two good questions.
I'll take the first and on the blockchain, because you're right to bring it up. The structural reason why it's very exciting, kind of the Web3 space broadly defined in the Philippines, is that we're the youngest country in Southeast Asia. The median age of the Philippines is 24 and a half years old. believe the next youngest country in the region is Vietnam at like 29. So we're significantly younger than any other country in Southeast Asia. We often refer to this as our demographic dividend, that we really have economically active part of the population really in their prime. That means that consumer adoption of things like blockchain and Web3 in a way has been leapfrogging a little bit, and in areas where you want a young consumer to adopt first. And just look at the experience of what TikTok Shop or ByteDance has done in I know e-commerce in the Philippines really has taken the country by storm in terms of market share. That the Philippines is really one of the prime markets globally to test consumer products that will be adopted by a young population. So I echo your sentiment around how exciting that space is. As to the other question.
Let me follow up with a question from Zoom. What about women in entrepreneurship in the Philippines?
My observation there.
Need special help or?
Tara's on Zoom right now, but she used to host Geeks on a Beach.
Yeah.
And I used to sponsor the Women in Tech breakfast.
Uh-huh.
So there are women involved in tech. I think it's a little bit different culturally. It's acceptable, like for women to take the lead, and there are a lot of founders on the entrepreneurial side, and I think there's a lot of support that already exists. Even Kubo was run by a woman, and Idea Space was run by a woman, Diane, et cetera. So I mean, my observation is that women, do have the support. I don't think they feel, I don't think that they feel there's any, difference with them leading. And also as an investor, I mean,
100%.
you.
No, I would certainly echo that. And you mentioned Geeks on a Beach, not used to, so still happening. And
Yeah.
shout out to Tina. I also happened to be at Bohol for the last Geeks on a Beach session a few months ago, and I think she's doing it again this year. So those of you interested can go to Geeks on a Beach as well. But certainly, I think that's one of the strengths of the Philippine ecosystem is there is quite parity, or there's a significant opportunity for women founders. Kaya founders, we do a lot. I mean, shout out to Kaya, but Success, our managing director, who's quite an instrumental player in the kind of organizing the local female founders. But certainly, we're very proud of the very, very high percent. I think half of our founders are women in our portfolio. And I would agree with you that it culturally is an advantage that we have, that it's quite an equal landscape.
Even with the venture capital, right?
That's right, yeah.
Minette?
That's right.
With Kickstart
Right there,
Ventures.
Kickstart and
So I'm going to claim executive privilege and ask the last question. I think it was about 15 years ago when we had a panel on the Philippines in this series. The panelists were all really downright depressing. As you know, oh, we don't
I on that
have
panel?
this, and oh, we need this, and the ecosystem is missing, whatever. And so finally, at the end of the panel session, I had to ask, so why should someone try to start a company in the Philippines? And one of the panelists said, because it's more fun in the Philippines. My question to you, is it still more fun in the Philippines? Is it still a really active place where it's really worth going to see exciting people as well as exciting things? Kendrick, you first.
I definitely think so, and I'll answer that spending most of my time here, which is right. Like I visited in February, and that was my first time back, and so in a number of years. One, there's a lot of fun things to do, I will admit. In fact, there's an entire new district called Bonifacio Global City. It's like it's brand new. It looks like Manhattan, but cleaner and more spacious. And it's come up in the span of like 7 years. And it's there's no shortage of activities of what you might want to do, but also the pace at which things change economically, demographically, and so on. So whether you want to approach the Philippines for its fun factor or whether you want to do it for a professional endeavor, I really think it's one of those.
Those don't have to be
dynamic.
separate.
That's very true. Yeah, very true. That's my answer. Very much
Yeah.
excited about it.
Would agree with Kendrick. I think he has the best of both worlds. I mean, I'm still bullish. I was never bearish on the Philippines. Never.
But on that panel.
No, I was not, I was gonna say I was not on that panel because I received a lot of notes. There were a lot of fellow Filipinos who didn't believe. And I said, we're gonna prove them wrong because we know that it's there. And I think right now there's still a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of growth. There's been a lot of investment in infrastructure, right, with the last administration. Now you've got a president who is friendly towards the US. So I think that for me, I'm looking at that as an opportunity because as president of STAC, when with the two previous administrations, they did not want to engage with us at all. I mean, they did move the Innovation Act, et cetera, forward, et cetera, but they didn't really want to engage. I think this administration does want to engage and wants to move things forward. And there's been infrastructure that's been put in place. Like my family's from Davao in the southern part of the country. And I was just there and it was great. And actually my son came with me and I said, you're in this mall. You would not know that you're in the Philippines outside of seeing fellow Filipinos. But in some areas, it's even more up to date than areas here in the US.
So Paulo, before you comment, I want to just follow up on that. Notice the things we didn't have to talk about today. You didn't have to talk about a communications infrastructure or the access to the internet or whatever. Implicit in being able to work remotely is exactly that kind of thing. And maybe because the telecom companies were early in this. Paulo, your comment.
No, I feel very passionately about this final question of yours, Professor Dasher. I'll say it even more strongly. I think the Philippines is the most exciting venture ecosystem globally these days. From what I'm seeing on the ground, it's really a once in a lifetime opportunity to see these generational companies being built in different sectors across the country and regions of the country. To answer your question directly though, it's really more fun in the Philippines because of the people. Something about our cultural heritage and the fact that we're such a plural population, many influences, many, our diaspora, many years thought of as our brain drain, a bad thing now, being one of our huge sources of advantage and turning into brain gain now with our diaspora coming home and inspiring those of us in the Philippines. Again, we stand on the shoulder of giants here in Silicon Valley and back home who have paved the way for all of us to be in this kind of very exciting period in the sun, I would say. And I would encourage any of you, if you have interest, to go check out what's happening in Manila, and you'll really see. We're actually planning at Kaya an immersion tour for any investors looking at wanting to understand really what's happening on the ground. And you'll see, feel for yourself that really the Philippines is the most exciting place globally.
That's a great comment to close on.